Good afternoon, YouTube. I'm sure most of you are familiar with the news organization known as Russia Today, or RT. For those of you who are not, Russia Today is a 24-hour international and multilingual news organization funded by the Russian government. It has a distinct anti-West and anti-American bias, and I can demonstrate this by bringing up an article that I found today on Russia Today's website. This article is about a Pentagon-designed robot through their research division, DARPA, that is designed for humanitarian reasons. In fact, if you read the Russia Today article, they talk about how this was mainly brought about due to the Fukushima disaster, and the fact that the disaster could have been cleaned up much faster if it wasn't for the fact that human beings are, well, fragile and can't withstand high amounts of radiation. However, Russia Today felt it pertinent to entitle the article, Atlas, Meet the Pentagon's Newest Terminator Robot. And in the final paragraph of the article, they say the following, quote, "In an article released by DARPA, so far Atlas can walk briskly, avoid obstacles, climb stairs, and even withstand the force of a mid-sized wrecking ball set to swing in its torso. After all, the 6 teams in the contest will have to prove that their personally programmed Atlas can withstand any event that a future army of robots might have to endure in the wild, if unleashed in the wild, for humanitarian purposes, of course." Kind of implying that this robot's for war, even though they're saying it's for humanitarian aid. Which, if you actually look at the robot, you kind of get the hint it's more for humanitarian aid, given the fact that it's not equipped with tank treads, but rather hydraulic legs, which are far more impractical and expensive, and really not set for the battlefield. But even still, DARPA doesn't always do projects that are strictly for military-like missiles and weapon systems. Here's some other things that DARPA have done extensive research on. Computer networking and cars that drive themselves. So DARPA's interest in robots, while may have an interest in someday having robots go into battle as opposed to human beings, it's obvious that this is not what this particular robot system is for, yet Russia Today is talking about how we'll have armies of robots. This is more likely to drum up fear about the US government and the NSA spying programs. However, I do enjoy Russia Today as a source of hilarious irony. I personally enjoyed it when one of their commentators referred to Rick Santorum as a tool for being homophobic. Meanwhile, the government that funded her show has policies like gay propaganda laws, where if you promote homosexuality with propaganda, which they don't really define what promoting homosexuality and what propaganda is, so you could just say, it's okay to be gay and wind up in jail in Russia. But they have laws like that in the books, which are laws that would certainly bring a smile to Mr. Santorum's face, given the fact that he's happy to wear his bigotry on his sweater vest. They'll have one of their commentators refer to him as a homophobe, despite the fact that their government's far more homophobic. There's also hilarious irony in having them attack the United States for its drone program and the civilian deaths that it causes. Meanwhile, why don't you watch Russia Today's reporting on Chechnya? Doesn't really seem to get covered very often, and, well, Russia doesn't have a good track record with that either. They also pull the same stunt when it comes to civil liberties. They're happily jumping on the Snowden debacle in the PRISM program, despite the fact that programs like PRISM are nothing new. And I will openly admit that I was wrong to talk about the invasion of privacy because metadata is broadcasted. I did not have a good understanding of metadata. I would like to formally apologize as well, albeit in a separate video, and yeah. That and programs like PRISM are nothing new as well. Upon doing research, there are programs like Omnivore, Carnivore, and Echelon, as well as other programs done by the NSA and the Bureau of Investigation that pretty much show PRISM's just par for the course. Russia Today is happy to jump all over the Snowden debacle and claim that the United States is destroying civil liberties, etc. Meanwhile, if you look at Russia, you'll find out that if you're a political opponent of Vladimir Putin, you could easily go to jail. Or if you're a journalist criticizing Putin, you could turn up dead. There are some good civil liberties for you, but the epic moments of hilarity don't just stop there. Russia Today often promotes conspiracy theorists. They often promote 9/11 conspiracy theorists like Alex Jones and pretend that there's a legitimate debate over whether or not 9/11 was perpetrated by the United States government or Al-Qaeda. They pretend like there's a legitimate debate over whether or not Barack Obama was actually born in the United States or born in Kenya, and whether or not he's actually fit to be president of the United States because of that. They even give a credible voice to those who believe that the Bilderberg Group are controlling the world through a new world order. Yes, this is supposedly a news organization doing this. Another thing about Russia Today is that they've given voice to rather insignificant and controversial figures like the new Black Panther Party. There's also been some controversy surrounding programming on Russia Today. They once held the show called Adam vs. the Man, which was hosted by Adam Koesh. Mr. Koesh is a former Marine. Also, Mr. Koesh decided that on air he'd try to fundraise for Ron Paul, which prompted a Federal Election Commission investigation into foreign campaign contributions. Mr. Koekesh's show was subsequently terminated. For those of you out there who still don't believe that Russia Today is biased, despite the fact that they downplay trespasses of non-Western governments while talk happily about the ones done by Western governments, here's some other food for thought. Julian Assange said that if it was him, WikiLeaks, releasing information about the Russian government, his relationship with Russia Today would not be that good. Also, according to a Guardian article, which I'll link below, and it talks about their questionable advertising, which I'll cover in a second, it talks about how the Russian government spends more on trying to spin its image abroad than it does on helping its unemployed citizens. That should give you some food for thought. But on to the questionable advertising. They promote their network with an ad that once compared Barack Obama to then Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. They asked which one is the bigger nuclear threat. Here's the thing. Iran does not have nuclear weapons yet. And while the United States does have nuclear weapons, the leadership of the United States has never said they wanted a country wiped off the map. So I think there might be a bigger problem with a nuclear Iran than a nuclear United States. But anyway, YouTube, I hope you have a good evening.